Okay, guys, quick question for you. What tracks do you use to evaluate your system? Music tracks. When you go to a show and they ask you, what do you want to play? What do you request? Well, I've got a few tips for you today. I've got 2 tracks, and I put that in quotes that I think are going to be atypical from what you're used to hearing about, but it's something I've learned over the years. And one music track that I'm going to walk you through piecemeal what I listen for. Stay tuned. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. First off, want to give a shout out to all my friends in the Florida path of Milton. As of today, it hasn't hit yet, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen when it does hit. I went through Katrina, lived in New Orleans at the time. That's actually what was the impetus for me moving to Houston. For those that don't know the story, my wife was pregnant and due to be delivered on the day Katrina hit. So we were basically evacuating while she was almost in labor, gave birth in Houston. She was like featured on the news because it was like the first baby that was the Katrina baby. Now my daughter's not named Katrina, but it basically, we moved our whole life here after. Not that our house was destroyed by Katrina, although most people's were. That's what I'm afraid of. If you're in the path of this hurricane, it is not anything to play with. So best wishes to those guys. Everybody give their thoughts and prayers to those guys. Hopefully it'll turn out okay, but as of now, it hasn't hit. And I'll give guys an update. Mike Sweck, who I featured in that last video, he's in that direct path. So that aside, I want to get to the topic of the video today. And actually, this video kind of parlays on that last video where I talked about Mike Sweck at the beginning, but I talked about measurements and DSP and room treatments. These are the type videos I like doing. I mean, I like everything I do. I mean, I don't do it unless I enjoy it. I like showing you the $1 million acapella Spherons, the Alcy Vox, the Ari Sarat $1 million system. Those are just a few, the YG facility tour. These are companies that are a little bit under the radar, but I can afford to do this kind of content for you guys. And really, these to me are even higher level than the big name brands and the big conglomerates. And so I love showing you that. But I love doing these videos too. This may not be the most popular, but when it comes down to evaluating a system, this is one of the toughest things that took me the longest to learn. And still to this day, I see it being the sticking point for most audiophiles in their journey in terms of what do they use to evaluate their system? Do they just use these same Keith Don't Go, Tin Pan Alley, you know, these stereotypical audiophile tracks to evaluate, and then if it sounds better or worse, then they say yay or nay? Or do they graduate to using measurements, tying their ears to the measurements, and then other creative ways to easily determine differences? Because if you've been a longtime subscriber, I have a reference playlist. I put it in Qobuz. Maybe I'll link it in the description here. Over 200 tracks in my reference playlist. And sometimes if I'm strictly using music, I have to go through dozens of those tracks to hear a potential performance benefit or something not so great. Or on one song it sounds better, another it doesn't. That's the kind of minefield of just using select tracks. And certainly if you're just using one track and these primitive setup methodologies that use one track, unless you were there, you were the recording engineer, you should not be using one track. But what the purpose of today's video is, what have I done if I can't go through 200 tracks at a show or when I get something in my house? If I had my druthers, although I don't do this at shows, I've got 2 tracks, as you're going to see in a minute. I'm going to show you from my chair that I use that will easily tell me right off the bat how good the system is on a macro basis. It doesn't tell everything. Nothing's going to tell everything at first. You can't 100% rely on measurement. You can't 100% rely on certain tracks or your ears. But the combination of a few things I'm going to show you, 2 tracks, and then I'm going to walk you through, and I'm going to call myself out on this. One of the problems with audiophile subjective reviews is that you can either go ad nauseum into all that jargon, nebulous jargon, or you can go all into measurements. And I tend to just talk in terms of this is great, badass. I don't go into a lot of details of the mid-range versus the imaging cues and all that stuff. And I probably should, and I'm going to try to fix that today. But the reason, and then I don't 100% rely on measurements because I can't even take measurements at some of these systems I go to. But the reason I don't do the nebulous audiophile jargon like a lot of reviews is that it really takes more than just what you can write down or verbalize. It takes understanding the song, certain parts of the song, and that's what I'm going to do today. And if I started doing reviews, this is what I would do. I would do these two tracks that I'm about to show you on any change of gear to see if I have a difference, combine it with measurements, but also I would use this track that I'm about to show you and some others. If you like what I'm doing in this video, let me know. I'll do this on more tracks. But what I'm going to do, and I wish more would do, is play the track and stop at each individual point and tell you what I'm listening for, what I'm hearing. And the point is not so much what you're going to hear through my YouTube recording and my cell phone, but condition you and train you to do this at your own home. And then when you play that same track, you will hear the same things I'm hearing live when you make a change, or if the change is, material. If you don't hear a change, that's very valuable. So what I want to do is show you my methodology for right off the bat in a shortcut versus doing 200 tracks like my reference playlist. But I'll put that in the description. Enjoy this. And if you like some more of this, let me know and I'll do more songs in the near future. Okay, guys, what you're looking at here is my Bach for Mac screen. Now, you don't need the Bach for Mac to do this. I'll show you the ways to do it, but it's part of one of the ancillary benefits of having a Bach is you have so many calibration tools that will allow you right off the bat to know if you have any problems. Now, those of you that value measurement, well, anybody that's watching my channel probably values measurements. Now, you don't have to put all of the stock in the measurements, but when you have this kind of data like here, crosstalk cancellation, 7 and 9 dB per channel average. If you've got a frequency response that looks like this, flat right on top of each other until it gets to your ear pinna. And again, all of us have our own little fingerprint based on our ears of how we hear in this range that I'm circling. And if you don't, you really should never just take somebody's subjective opinion of what they like. Yes, for them, it may be real. But unless you have the exact same fingerprint, which we never do, come back to my room. You'll see all the gear stays the same. The room stays the same. We all measure different in this area. That's why I'm not a big fan of just subjective jargon advice and reviews, because that is really, it doesn't mean that person's lying or deaf, although sometimes it does. But in this case, even if they are being 100% accurate, it doesn't mean it's going to apply to you. And that's why measurements are so important now, because with the Bach, you can get your exact fingerprint and adjust things for that. And then impulse response, very important for identifying reflections in your room, where to put room treatments. So these measurements alone, without even playing music, will tell you a lot about how your system's going to sound. And for all those people, I know none of you guys that are like that watch my channel, but anybody that does and doesn't value these measurements, well, they must be deaf, because if you can't hear the improvement that these things do, and I'm actually going to prove it to you real quick, then you need to go see an audiologist pretty quick if these improvements aren't audible to you. And so the measurements alone are helpful, but what this whole point of this video is to not showcase the measurement side as much as how you can audibly, easily A/B this improvement. And one of the things you can do without even playing tons of tracks, one of my biggest pet peeves are these setup CDs and methodologies that rely on one song to set up and calibrate a system. That right there is evidence of total ineptitude and primitive knowledge of how sound works. If you're going to use one song, and especially a song you weren't even present at the recording, that's sheer folly to use that. If you're going to use music, and I've got a reference playlist for you on both Qobuz and Tidal, I have over 204 tracks. And sometimes it takes dozens upon dozens before I get to the track that will evidence a problem or showcase an improvement of something I made. It's not always going to be on every track. Some of these tracks don't play all the harmonics, all the frequencies
and aren't as dynamic to test that aspect, you need a very extensive list of tracks to do that. But in absence of that, let's just say I don't have time to go through them all. What's one track I can easily tell right off the bat? Well, going back to my Bach, it's so easy to use correlated pink noise. Now let me play this for you real quick before I talk about it. Okay, so correlated pink noise, the word correlated means both left and right are identical. It's basically a magnifying glass on your entire frequency response that I'm highlighting here. It'll basically play everything to kind of give you that flavor of what balance you have, if it sounds a little too bass heavy or too high or missing some stuff in the middle. You will start to, at first, you're not going to know what good pink noise sounds like versus not. And you're probably just going to get accustomed to whatever your system uncorrected sounds like. But what the pink noise will do is allow you to easily, if you make a change, let's say you change speakers or you change anything major, you can play pink noise before and after that change and easily tell the difference, much easier than playing 200 songs because it's so easy, because it's basically playing everything for you. So let me play it again. And then while I'm playing it, right now it's playing pink noise corrected and perfected by the Bach and all these measurements. So my A/B test to showcase for you is all of this pink noise, and then I'm going to bypass everything that it did. And then you're going to be able to hear what these measurements mean and hear so easily with one click of a button, you will hear the improvement. Now, again, some things you're not going to be able to hear through the recording because like imaging. One other thing that is great about correlated pink noise is that when you play it, it should be right in the middle, a ball of sound of all those frequencies. And that's how you can tell if your speakers are out of phase or not. If it's not that ball of sound in the middle, then you've got a phase problem. But even when I A/B this here live in the room, I will be able to tell that it's even more diffuse. It's not as focused because of all the timing and frequency response corrections done by the Bach. It will be a much tighter ball. It will sound so much more real and even. But let me just play it for you, and then I'll bypass, and you'll be able to hear, even on a YouTube recording, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so this is corrected. That's a very good pink noise, high fidelity level, perfect pink noise, sounds like. Now I'm going to bypass all the corrections. Immediately more diffuse, and it's not as near even. Now it's back correct. So if you can't hear the difference between that and that, then you probably should go see an audiologist. But that's the difference of these corrections, and then it's bypassed without those corrections, what I would have if I didn't have the Bach. And that tells me right away the value of these metrics. Now, you may say, well, I don't know what good pink noise sounds like. Let's translate it to music. Well, even before we do that, we're going to still go to the music, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But another thing you can do, you don't really know unless you have a lot of experience with pink noise to know which problem areas need to be addressed when you're hearing pink noise that doesn't sound perfect like I just showed you. So what you can do is, I'm going to go to a different bin here, and I'm going to play a frequency sweep for you. Now, my frequency sweep, even uncorrected, is pretty good because I have such good room treatments and the speakers are good and all. But you still can probably hear a little bit of not totally even as it sweeps from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Now, this is going to be uncorrected frequency sweep.
Please place head
Left and right channel individually.
Bach measurements done. Thank you.
Okay, it's going to calculate the don't pay attention to any of the graphs because actually the mics aren't in my ear. They're like on my chair over here. So it's going to have some weird results there. So this isn't going to be applicable. But just listening for that frequency sweep, if you have problems with your, like everybody's going to have in-room. Let me go to my uncorrected results here. If I go to any correction, I have actually extremely good bass under 100 hertz, almost no big suckouts or anything, and left-right performing quite well. Then I have some floor bouncing issues here, and the ORC easily takes care of that. But you will probably hear almost everybody in room without as many bass traps as I have and calibrations. You're probably going to hear in that first initial part of the frequency sweep, you'll hear a suck out, or maybe it'll be really boosty in one area and then suck out, and it'll be woo. It won't sound as even as you just heard it. And that's one easy way to know through a frequency sweep alone what you're going to hear when it comes to music. The two are, go hand in hand. It's not like you can have an uneven frequency response and all of a sudden for music it'll sound right. No, it may not sound bad on certain tracks like Keith Don't Go. It doesn't matter what your frequency response is for Keith Don't Go. I mean, you don't know how that guitar was tuned, and it's an electric guitar. It just a lot of impulses of music that it doesn't really matter so much. But when you hear classical music or some of the tracks I'm about to play for you, then that's a different story. Then you can easily tell why you need to first get used to what good pink noise sounds like, especially if you want to A/B before and after, and also a good frequency response. And you will start to learn the value of why this is so important if you want to get true reference sound. So let's go to music now and see how this translates, though, with a song. And I'm going to break down what I listened for. If I just had a few songs to go through, which songs right off the bat will tell me a problem in a system. So one of my go-to tracks, if I just have time for one, is this song, And So It Goes by Jennifer Warnes. So let me bring this one up. And let me put it on pause for a second. So Jennifer Warnes is known for very good reference recordings. And this in particular is one of my favorites, although others of hers are used more often. I like it because it focuses on just her vocals and piano most of all. And when you only have a few things going on in a song, it allows you to focus a lot better than like Keith Don't Go with 100 things going on and just impulses, short burst of sound. She holds the notes really good, so you can tell harmonic structure and your frequency response. If there's any anomalies, you can tell sibilance, which would indicate probably some issues over 10,000 hertz or even lower. And you can also tell full range for the most part, not everything, true full range. This is not one of those pipe organs, but she's playing a piano that, if you have a piano like I have a daughter that plays a piano, I have at least that reference. I wasn't there for this recording, but there's enough here for me to have as a reference and enjoy this track and use it for me as a reference. And on top of that, no matter how many times I play this song, when it sounds right, it just gives me goosebumps. I mean, it's just without fail. And if the song is played on a system that isn't good, it won't give me goosebumps. So there is one of those litmus tests right off the bat. But it's tied into, why am I getting goosebumps? Well, it's because the frequency response is perfect and flat. And I'm going to go through playing this song and stop it at individual points to tell you exactly what I'm listening for at those points. So here we go.
In every heart there is a room.
Okay, so right off the bat, the piano has to be realistic. You get a little bit, even in the movement of her dress. You're going to hear the pedals, all those details. But really what I pay attention to is that last word that she just sang, rooms. On so many systems with anomalies in the lower mid-range and bass, that word rooms, it gets a little muddy at the end, or it gets a little exaggerated, and it just doesn't sound like a normal person singing the word rooms. This sounds so natural and real. Now we're going to keep going on, but this is another good song for sibilance. So S's and stuff like that that don't sound like Z's, that's important. Listen up as we keep going in this song.
A sanctuary safe and strong to heal their wounds from lovers past until a new one comes along. I spoke to you.
Okay, so she did the same thing. Wounds, held it for a long time. She held it for a long time. When it sounds warbly, the harmonics of her voice, that's another thing that you know the frequency response is off. That sounded so natural and real. And the other thing that is very good with this song in particular that I listen for, especially for detail of a system, and it's one thing that AI really hasn't fooled me yet, and that's why that one song, Songs of Silence by Johnny Cash, that I did a whole video on. Yes, they had some breaths in between the songs, but it didn't sound real. And the reason being is when you listen to this song, especially when she said the word heart in the beginning, you can almost tell how much air is in her lungs as she sings each word of the song. And that's where AI has not been successful yet in getting that flow of realism, of the breath in your lungs will change how you sing, whether you're getting to the end of the storage of air in your lungs to sing versus a full set of lungs. And you can tell exactly how her breaths are and how much she has in the gas tank as she sings. And that's a detail element and also just a realism that will get corrupted if you don't have timing cues with your system, you don't have proper frequency response.
In cautious tones, you answered me with no pretense, and still I fear I've said too much. My silence is my self-defense.
So again, a few words there with S's. They should not sound like Z's. They should not be harsh. They should sound like a person right in front of you singing. Obviously, she's using a mic, and obviously mics have colorations and all that. And whatever you're playing this back on, it's not going to be like she's singing in front of you, even if you have, the most expensive headphone rig. But you can definitely start to tell in your own system and others where there are differences as you hear this song. And that's the key thing to point out, is that this is what you want to be listening for, even if you can't tell from my YouTube recording the different things I'm mentioning.
For every time I've held a rose, it seems I only felt the thorn. And so it goes, and so it goes, and so will you soon, I suppose. But if my silence made you leave, then that would be my worst mistake. So I will share this room with you, and you can have this heart to break.
So when she says share and has a long drawn out, I often notice systems with frequency response anomalies where that does not sound realistic. It might even sound as she's trailing off, and that decay may even have some parts of that share pop up even higher, which is unnatural when she's losing her breath. These are subtle things that, again, differentiate a true reference level system and frequency response and performance versus good, very good, or even poor in many cases when I hear this song, especially at shows where you have poor rooms that aren't being corrected with any room treatments or any DSP.
This is why my eyes are closed. It's just as well for all I've seen. And so it goes, and so it goes. And you're the only one who knows.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in terms of realism, the delicacy when she's singing very delicately into the mic, and then when she raises the amplitude a little bit. But being able to tell the difference from one system to another with this one song, these are things you can easily concentrate on and know the difference right away, and you will know what sounds right or not. I'm kind of telling you whether it translates through your YouTube video and your headphones is another story, but this is something that you will get it if you start playing it on your system and then making changes to your system and then playing it on others. That's where you'll see the value of this more than empirically what you're listening to right now. But hopefully you're picking up some of these things. Let me keep going.
So I would choose to be with you. That's if the choice were mine to make. But you can make decisions too. And you can have this heart to break. This is why my eyes are closed. It's just as well for all I've seen. And so it goes, and so it goes. And you're the only one who knows.
Just such a beautiful song, beautiful lyrics, and the piano just sounds so right to me. And when the piano sounds right, I get goosebumps. My daughter plays it. It's just an instrument that resonates with me. And if it's wrong, I cannot tolerate it. And let me just tell you, if you get it right, it will give you those goosebumps. And, you know, it may sound good even if you don't have a totally flat frequency response, especially if some keys aren't being played and tones. But trust me, in the long run, when you get something like this flat, it will pay off on songs like that. And you will start hearing those subtleties where measurements now will translate to what you're hearing, whether it's pink noise, frequency response, music. You won't have to just guesstimate or use Dominic Fils-Emile and some of these Keith Don't Go and only be stuck with a few tracks you can play that sound good on your system. You will be confident playing anything on your system, and at least you will get, sometimes those recordings do suck, okay, but you will end up realizing, hey, you know what, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It now sounds a lot better. Part of it was my own system. So I'll do more videos in the future with this where I play the track and then stop at each point, but this is already going a little bit longer than I thought. If you guys like this kind of stuff, I'm happy to do that. So let me know in the comments, and I'll see you back here soon.